Hi there, welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to migrate some of the virtual machines which are available on our Hyper-V server and migrate to our Azure. So to do this, we actually have to go to Azure Migrate as a service, as we talked in the previous lecture or the overview lecture. And from there you have an actually different options to migrate. So in our case, this demo is limited. I know this is going to be close to 25 to 30 minutes, but if we try to do it at one go, it would go close to 1 to 3 hours between, but I'm trying to minimize the time that it takes actually for the replication and all other parameters considering. And now for this demo, we are actually trying to migrate the physical servers. So there are different scenarios. So if you see here, we have here service migration, database migration, VDI, and web apps, and Databox. So out of this, we are going to actually work on the servers at this point of time. And for that, as a first step, as in the overview lecture, we have to create our project basically. So any of these 5 of these migration goals, you have to actually create your project. So that's the first step. So let's create a project by clicking on create project. This project is going to be in my one of the resource groups. So I have already created Azure Migrate demo as my resource group, so I'm going to put it there, and I'm going to give a meaningful name so that I know that it's going to be a project specific to my Hyper-V. So I'll just give without any spaces. So like I have some of the web servers might be running on my servers, so I'll just give as a web server migration project 1 or something like that. This is going to be geography again to US, because all these servers are located in geography location, so I'll just use that, and I'll stick to that and create this migration project. What would happen, why we need to create migration project? The reason being, so whatever the replication gonna happen or the things which you wanted to consider for the migration of physical servers, that all comes into this project. So this is called the migration project. So if you want to change, or you might have multiple projects, then simply have come back here and click on change and select what are the projects you want to switch, so that the information that you are going to discover or you're going to assess will come in this specific project. That's how it's going to work. So that's the frame. So what we're going to do is, as a first step, we're going to do the assessment that would actually give you the assessment of the server, whether it can be a good candidate for migrating to Azure or not. And you know that you would come to know that what kind of server it is, all that information, and then you are actually going to do the migration. That's this. So as you migrate, which would be the second step. So as a first step, what we do is either in the first or second step. As a first step for these two phases would be the discovering. Later point we do and we assess, or we replicate, or we migrate. So it all depends. So in this case, it's going to be a here discover, and then it's going to be assess, and then in the other section, we're gonna, instead of the overview, we would actually go for the migration. So if you just click on the tools that are available, if you see here, these all are the third-party available tools which does this migration made easy for you. You see, if you read these documentation which were provided by Marketplace, let's say Cloud Recon, who's going to do this is they are going to basically do the assessment and discovery, all that for you, and give you a wonderful report whether it can be migrated or not. If at all you are not trusting, or you're not going with Microsoft built-in assessment for servers, yeah, you do have these are coming from Marketplace, and in fact you're going to pay for that. So as a first step, I just clicked on the discover. So what happens is, with the discover, either you wanted to migrate from either VMware or from a physical server or from a Hyper-V. You have to choose here. Or if you have any CSV file that needs to be imported, you can do that for the replication. In our case, we would actually go with the discovery process, and this actually involves a few of these steps. And you see here, these steps, whatever you have here, the generating is your migration project key, or downloading migration appliance, and preparing your VM, all that appliances on your VM. It all remains the same thing, but what differs is whether your source is actually a VMware or from a Hyper-V or a physical server. You need to decide this first. And once you decide it, once you know which one you're gonna choose. So in our case, I'm actually trying to demonstrate with the Hyper-V. The steps remain same. Either you go with a VMware or any other. The 4 steps remain same. The first one and the second, third, fourth. So what happens is I'm gonna talk all these in detail with help of Hyper-V. So you see here, I have already logged into my Hyper-V server. This is my Hyper-V, and I can have only single VM here, and this VM is running perfectly without any issues. And so I just wanted to migrate this VM, whatever here, this is going to migrate to my Azure cloud. That's what we are going to try to do it. If you have already gone through ASR, Azure Site Recovery, as a lecture, yeah, that's also very similar. But what happens is that we are actually talking in the ASR for the failover and other parameters we are actually talking here. It's going to be migration, just for the migration. And in fact, the entire backend for Azure Migrate, whatever we are trying to do, is going to be again depend on ASR. That's nothing but Azure Site Recovery Services. But it would be a little bit different, or the front end might, they have changed to show you, instead of you go and work with the Azure Site Recovery blade, you are actually working in Azure Migrate blade. That's only difference technically, and but in the backend everything remains same. So let's have a look on properly about this VM. So this VM is just a VM with a name called a small VM with a 2 core processor and about 8 GB RAM. So what happens is here you're actually going to download a VHD file. So this VHD, with the help of this VHD, we are going to actually create a Appliance. We actually call this as the Appliance. So why we call this as Appliance is within our Hyper-V, we create this with the help of this VHD. So it's not just a VHD, it is actually a complete exporter of a VM. So we would actually import that entire VM, and then it's going to spin up as the VM. It would ask you for entering the username and password. Once you enter that, you have to run some kind of wizard. So for that wizard also, it automatically starts with a web page auto loaded for you. So you just have to follow that wizard. We're going to view that maybe in another 10 minutes or so, but just wanted to show you and explain to you, there are actually in the step 2, you have either VHD option or maybe a zip file which contains certain PowerShell scripts that's gonna execute on existing physical or a virtual machine, so that becomes as your Appliance. Why we call Appliance is it actually sends the information back to Azure in a way that how many VMs are there, whether it actually helps the discovery process, because if you remember, we are actually doing the discovery. So it's going to help us as the Appliance or the scripts. It's going to actually help for us in terms of the discovery purpose. Okay, so that's a step 2. But what exactly the step 1? Step 1, what happens is this actually, whatever the name you're going to give here, and you're going to generate a key. So this is very similar what we do with the ASR. But here it's going to generate a lengthy key along with the subscription, all that detailed, and that information gets registered in the process of Azure Appliance. So we need to input that information in the Appliance. Then automatically, that's nothing but you're actually implementing the Appliance. So that means you're importing, exporting, and once you imported this Appliance with the VHD format, it's gonna give here within this process of setting up the Appliance the key, and then you wait for some time for the initial discovery, and then that actually sends the information back to Azure Cloud, and you can view the assist information for you. So that's the ultimate goal. So we are going to do that all from right now. So let me enter here a Appliance name and generate a key. So that's going to be my Appliance name, and based on that, it's going to create a key for us. And this key is a unique key and would work of to generate or to register within my Microsoft Azure migration project only. So it might take some time. And now the key has been created. If you see here, in a minute, we are going to get this migration project key. So what I will be doing is I would be actually copying this key and I would save somewhere. And also I have to download the file, which is the close to 10 GB of the file. If you see here, that's coming as a VHD format, which is coming from this step 2. So once this is completely downloaded as a zip file, which will be available in my downloads folder if I'm correct, and from there what I'm going to do is I would be extracting this. So I just got downloaded, so I'm going to extract to my folder, a specific folder. Just wanted to be assured that it should be in a right folder. So I have created appliances folder and a C:VM. So I'm just putting there to extract everything that it has. So in this case it has close to 10 GB plus of the content, so it's just gonna extract it in a minute or so. So this extracted files is nothing but exported a virtual machine. So as a next step, I have to import to my virtual machine this extracted files. So if I just go to the folder, you would be getting like virtual machine snapshots, all that, normal things like virtual machine, hard disk, snapshot, all that are available. So as a next step, I'll simply have to just go ahead and import it. So I'll just copy to the appliance, or maybe to the appliance name, but I'll just go and import here, and later point I'll just put a backslash so that it would actually discover it. So I'll just enter here backslash and that folder of Azure application appliance, and then click on next. And this way I'm going to choose as the existing unique IDs. So that would actually use the same configuration. And if you see here, I got a small error. The reason being my machine does not have a 8-core processor. It's just a test machine. So my physical machine HyperV is a test machine. So I'm just going to reduce the CPU power to 4, and then also the RAM later point. I'm going to choose here the network card as VMNAT, which would give the internet accessibility. And if I just go to the settings, I would like to adjust according to my existing memory. So let's say I just wanted to go for 6 GB or something like that, and then I would start the virtual machine. So when I start, it's gonna do the Windows oops setup. That means the couple of reboots, and then it would actually prompt for entering the user ID and password. You see here the license terms and all that pre-populated for me from that virtual appliance, and it is also asking me to enter the password. So I just have to set some password, so that way I can actually log into this VM as appliance. And opposed to that, if I have internet, and automatically, actually, if you see here, I don't have internet, so I'll just pause this video for a minute or so to configure my IP address so that I know I'll be getting the proper internet. And as soon as I start this, if you see here, it actually pointed here, automatically opened with a web page, and it is actually doing all the prerequisites that needs to be connecting and registering with Azure Migrate as a service. For that, it's actually doing all the backend things for us in the automated fashion for us. And this URL is purely auto-generated with the appliance on a port. So if you see here, new updates got installed, I'm going to actually refresh the page, and that's it. It's going to actually takes me to the second step. So this was the first step where we have actually done the pre-request, and the second step is registering Azure Migrate. You remember we did actually copied a key, and that key to be pasted here. So you see here Azure Migration Project Key, I just copied one more time, and I can paste here. The reason being, I have to it's not actually RDB enabled, right? So I'm just gonna paste it so as it is instead of typing. So that takes a minute or so. and it's just copied. And if I just click on login, it's going to pop up a new window and come up with some code, automated code that's going to pre-populate it for us. And if I just click on next, it's going to actually ask me for username and the password to run the PowerShell script. The reason being, in the back end, actually in this specific to the second step, that's the Azure migration, that's where actually it's gonna run in the back end a PowerShell script. So to do that, I need to simply log in with my credentials one more time. And you see here, it says that, hey, you can close this safely because I've initiated the backend for the PowerShell applications to run and configure for you. That would actually go ahead and register. You see here, it's gonna do all that registration with the PowerShell, and it might take 10 minutes also. So I have done that registration automatically by pausing all that. And now if you see here, this is where actually I'm gonna use the credential. Let's say I wanted to enter a wrong credential. So let me tell you why these credentials are needed. So these credentials are needed in order to discover from your HyperV server. Let's say I gave as admin as a wrong, and in fact, because there's no admin account, I have as a Paddy account, I would be giving later point. But let's say I just gave the wrong credentials, and see if I try to discover a single or multiple items. So in my case, I'm gonna discover a single virtual machine with the help of existing credentials that we have given. And if I just put my computer name or maybe IP address, you see here, and it's gonna actually, that's nothing but my HyperV server, so it's gonna fail actually. So you see the validation is failed. The reason being, the account does not exist or might not have a permissions. So what I have to do is I have to re-add that specific account that would actually have a permissions fully for HyperV manager. So I'll just edit this. The password remains same, just the account. So let me type here as a Paddy, that's account ID, and click on save. So it's saved. And now if I go back and see here, validation is successful. Thank you. And see, I'm gonna actually, if I want, I can start revalidate or start discovery. So when I click on start discovery, that means the first and second and third step, 3 steps has been done. The first one is a pre-request, second one is registering with Azure Migration Service, third one is entering the credentials and giving the server, HyperV server name. So it's gonna actually start discovery. In case if you are running with some kind of test environment, if you don't have a proper DNS, you might get an error. So just enter the host names similar to like this in the host file. Give your computer name and the IP address of your HyperV server. That would actually FQDN kind of thing, it does that discovery phase. So if you see here, the discovery is completed. You have to go to the Azure portal and review the discovery inventory. So whatever the step we have done here, let me go back here and explain to you. So what we have done is, as a first step, we have created a project for HyperV and we generated a key. We downloaded this VHD file. We set it up a appliance within our HyperV server, and we also initiated the discovery, which is what we have done now, and then we waited for some time to collect the data. So this is the complete 4 steps that we have done. So post to that, what if we have to do? We have to just go back to Azure Migrate and refresh it, because the project data is not yet updated. So select the proper project, which is migration project, and click on refresh. When you do actually refresh, it's going to pull up the latest information that actually found as a discovered. So in this case, you see here 2 servers got discovered, and the next thing is we are going to actually review that as the assessment. So we have done the discovery. Next is assessment. So if I just go to the assessment, this is a complex thing, I would say. But it's very important that how you wanted to migrate. Let's say you want to go for 3 years reserved instances, this assessment you want to see, or you want to just go for a different region, or pay as you go model. All that different things you can check out here. Let's say here location, I want maybe Australia location or Canada or East US, and then I might have a different VM series I needed that I can choose, or maybe a reserve instance for 1 year, 3 year, or no reservation. That's nothing but a pay-as-you-go model. So I can choose different things here. So why we are talking all this is based on this information, you are actually getting the assessment information. So if you are sure that this is what you wanted, you can simply save. So in my case, I just want to go for the built-in because there's nothing much for me, instead of pay as you go, because mine is pay as you go. If not, if needed, I can choose for other offers, all that. And also if you have the Windows licensing, you can choose the hybrid licensing option also. So I'm just discarding these changes. I'll simply go back here for assessing the server. So you see here, I'm just selected here default. And the second thing, that's the first thing is a basic, and we have selected here the machines which are coming from our marketplace, and I'm entering here assessment name. So with this name, the assessment name will be available, and later on we will be using that assessment for further analysis or for migration, all that. So I'll just enter here assessment for web server, for California web servers, or something like that. And you see here, I'm going to create a new group. Let's say you have a multiple groups. Why we need to create a multiple groups is within that server you might have to group, like 2 web servers and 1 SQL server, or might be NLB servers or front end or back end servers to be in one group, or you wanted to put it some other servers in a different group, which might be represent a different web or different project purpose you're actually putting into a different group. So you can do that grouping here. So in our case, we're just going with a single group. So I'll just choose here one group called here by selecting the virtual machine, which is found from the based on the discovery. So in the previous phase which we have done is a discovery, right? This is going to be assessment. So in the discovery phase, I found one server. So this is a server. So this server I'm going to actually group into this specific group, and you see here that's a group, and I'm going to create as the review and create a assessment. So this would actually finalize our discovery and assessment phase. As a next step, we're going to actually do the one more discover with the migration services. So the part 1 is completed. I put it, which is assessment tool section. So this section is completed. Let's have a look on by doing a quick refresh actually. So whatever we have to do, we actually select the project and do a quick refresh. So that would actually populate the latest data here, and you see here assessment is 1 now. So if I just go to this assessment, I get a wonderful report here, and you see here the confidence rating is very important in this case. This actually tells about the data that has populated. So let me click on that. So you are actually getting here Azure readiness information ready for Azure, and monthly cost, what would happen if this VM is migrated based on the values that we have given. So we have chosen for pay-as-you-go model. We didn't choose in maybe 3 years reserved, something like that. If at all you put that values, based on that values, this assessment report will generate. So you can create as many as you wanted, and you would actually get an idea based on that. And if you quickly read, actually what is happening is the discovery was not even happen a complete day. So it would actually impact, or it would not give you the exact information. So that's why you have to wait for some time to actually populate the data, so that you know that what's the input, output, and the storage it's going to use, all that. So you can see here it's going to actually boot it with the BIOS mode and the networks. It's not a UEFI in fact, and the disks, how many number of disks, and the core CPUs, memory we assigned just a 2 GB for that server, and all that information it's actually pulled up as the assessment. So now we know the assessment which we use for the by using the Microsoft default assessment. We didn't use any of the third-party assessment. We ran with the Microsoft Azure specific assessment services, and that's good. The next step is a migration tool. So once we complete this assessment tool, we would move to migration tool. So we have done the assessment. So let's jump into migration. That's the next step which it is talking about it. So within this, again, we have to follow from left to right. That's a discovery, replication, should we go. So this is a discovery. So as we talked earlier also, so the steps remains always same like in the previous for the assessment side also we did for the installing the appliance, all that similar fashion here also, whether you do it in the previous assessment for VMware as appliance or for HyperV as appliance, similar thing, similar options here. So it remains the same thing. It doesn't matter for us whether it's a HyperV or not. So I'll just go with HyperV, not the GCP or other cloud or maybe physical thing. So I'm gonna actually choose here the thing or from the east US. This is very important because later point you cannot change. So what you're trying to do is, you know, you got the assessment information. Now you are confident that it can be migrated, and this phase you are actually discovering the machines, and you wanted that machines to target to a specific region. That region cannot be changed later point. So in this case it's going to be East US. So I'm going to choose that, and once I've chosen that, I'm going to create this specific discover information. So let's click on create resources. That might take a minute or so to create the specific target with HyperV as the target here. So that's good, and it has done that step. Now if you see here, there are 3 more steps are there. The first step, what we have done is we have chosen the we have actually chosen the HyperV as a virtualization, and we have also selected the target region within the first step. So I would say this is the second step here. What would happen is actually this is nothing but, if you remember ASR lecture, we actually downloaded some kind of credentials which we have shown to our ASR, that's a site recovery installation. Once we install that, we have shown that similar thing here. Again, we are going to actually download here the ASR file, which is nothing but the Azure Site Recovery Provider.exe, and also the credentials from here, and we would actually install this exe on our HyperV server. That's nothing but ASR component, and you are going to register that component with this credentials, which we are going to download. And then we are going to actually do the, once it is registered, it's going to show here that HyperV server, and then we would actually click on registering, and then we are going to actually finalize the registration. So these are the steps are pending in the which are gonna upcoming. So let's do that one by one without any confusion. So here it says that preparing HyperV host. For that you need to download. So I just downloaded that credentials. That's nothing but a secure vault credentials, and also I'm going to download that. So in fact what I've done is actually I downloaded that, and I'm actually running that exe file. So it's a straightforward Azure Site Recovery Provider setup. Once the installation is completed, click on register. That's going to actually ask me a key which we have downloaded. That's downloaded by using that button which is in my downloads. So I'll choose that download. It's going to actually register this site name, all that, to Azure Migrate services. So it's nothing but in the backend it is actually doing the ASR, right? And once this is done, in a minute or so, if I just refresh this, I would actually get it as the this is already registered one of the HyperV console. So I'm just going back to the discovery. So I'll see here again one more time with the HyperV, and you see here it's actually one is connected. So what is pending is a finalizing registration. So I'll just simply click on that registration. So earlier the exe was installed on my HyperV server. It was connected, but it was not actually fully registered. So when I click on this button, it's going to register it. And if I just go back here and do a quick refresh, that would actually pull up the information, right? So you see here, that's where actually we have found the discovery. Now it's time for us to do the replication. So here I'm actually choosing the source as HyperV, and similarly this application is Migration Assistance, what we have run earlier. You remember that we have run all this project, all that earlier for the assessment purpose. So we're going to use that, and we're going to select what of the VM we wanted to migrate. So in our case, I have to select single VM. So in this case, USCA SRV 2019, and then click on next. So that would actually picks that VM to a target location. So if you remember ASR also, we are actually choosing the VM because when we migrate, it should have a proper VNet, as well as for the storage purpose we need to have a storage account. So these things are quite same what we have done with ASR. So similarly with the migration, that's Azure migration for the replication purpose, in fact actually post replication, what you do is you are going to actually failover. When you failover, you need to have a VNet and also the storage, right? So that's why it's going to ask us. So I'm going to choose here AZMig demo. That's my resource group, and my resource for storage account is this, and the VNet, that's we have already VNet, and my subnet I can choose, and if I want availability, all that scale set I can choose. If my machines are want to use for hybrid benefits, I can choose that, and this is where actually you can choose you want to migrate that 2-core 4 GB RAM to something, because I had actually 2 GB. So now I can go for a different size of VM, and also I can choose here the OS type, which is definitely it's a Windows OS, and then my size of hard disk, and then a replicate. So what would happen is, so earlier we registered the HyperV server. Now that VM we have chosen here as the replication job. So this would actually does the backend job for replication. So what else pending is once it is replicated, in fact I just paused and resumed, so it's just replicated, and it's gonna refresh. Once it's refresh, it's gonna show as the one replicating servers as one. If I just click there, it's gonna show me one server as a synchronized with a 0% because it's just done, right? So if I just wait for some more time, it's never actually performed the migration also, and 0%, and I'm gonna actually wait for maybe 30 minutes or so to do the complete replication. Post to that, I would actually go with the migration step. So because we have done the discovery, replication is done, and then the migration. So if you if I wait for 15-20 minutes or maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour based on my available bandwidth, it got replicated, and you see here it's now status is completely protected. That means I waited in fact around 1.5 hour for complete replication of 127 GB based on my bandwidth availability. In fact, I have a great bandwidth, that's why it was replicated quickly. And in your case, it all depends on the size of your VMs and the bandwidth availability. So once it is replicated, either you can do the migrate button there, or you can actually, let's actually have a look on here. So the replication is healthy, there's no errors. You can do for test migration, and the final step would be the migrate. So all that process you can follow. And in our case, I'm going to actually click on migrate, and if you see here, in order to prevent the data loss information, it's going to actually shut down my physical VM, my VM which is on my on-premises network, and then it's going to start the migration to switch over to Azure Cloud. So that's what it's going to do it, and before it actually does the final shutdown, it's going to do the final replication too. So you see here it's still running my VM. This is a VM which is running and which is in a static state, and I'm also shown here this is a VM which is running good. So I'll say that, hey, you go ahead and shut down, and if you see here, I'm not showing here Azure Migrate appliances, but instead if I just go here other, I can actually pull up here, this is the VM which I wanted to migrate. So definitely I would select this, and it is fully protected and it's healthy, so it was never tested for the migration also. I'm going to do that now. So I'll just select that and click on migrate. These are all of the technical steps actually you have to follow one by one. So if you just quickly notice here, and this might take a minute or so because it has to do a initial one more final actually sync up to Azure Cloud for your migration services, and then it simply executes a shutdown button. If you see, CPU spiked up and then it has shut it down and turned off, and that's good. And you see here, I'm gonna actually wait here for some time, and starting migration is completed successfully. And if I just go back to my Azure virtual machines, I have my a new VM which was just created, which is from my on-premises. And if you remember, with ASR also we never had a public IP information, and also we never had the NSG, all that. So you need to consider all these changes also if at all you have just migrated. So make sure that if you have a site-to-site VPN, you will not have any problem because the machine is available with a new IP address. Or if you have a proper VNet which consists of correlation with the on-premises network, so there's no downtime for your service. So that's good. And this is where I'm gonna actually review the entire thing, what we have done. I know that this is the 35 minutes already we have passed, and it's good to review what we have done so far. So we started Azure migration for service, and then within this we have as a step 1 as we have done the assessment, and step 2 as the migration. And for the assessment there are typically third-party tools also available, but we use the Microsoft default tools, but those third parties actually coming from marketplace, that means you have to pay and you can use it. And for the assessment we have done initially discovery, then assess, and then we have also reviewed what we found. And next step we have done similar thing. So let's go back here and see you have actually 2 virtual machines got assessed, and 1 group we have created. We did talk about the groups, like you have a multiple groups, you can do it. And also assessment is just the 1 assessment we have done. You can go for multiple assessments definitely. And in this case, once we have done this major phase 1, we have done the phase 2. In this case, that's the migration tools, and we started with the discovery, then replication, and then the overview. So within this discovery we found there are obviously there are one single virtual machine we wanted to migrate, so that's a machine. So we followed the replication, and then we tested the migration, and then we migrated 1 machine successfully. And we found in the infrastructure side 1 machine, that's the HyperV machine, which was connected, and the type is basically HyperV. So within that HyperV, whatever the machines are there, that can be automatically pulled, and you can see the job tasks, which are all of them are successful, and there were no events which are failing, all that. So that's what we have done. So like we started with the assessment and migration of that specific VM. I hope this lecture is useful for you. Thank you for watching. Take a time to review and replay if you have any questions.